My name is Noah Candler, and I'm 35 years old. For 7 years, I was the backbone of Peterson & Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm in downtown Chicago. I wasn't the loudest guy in the room or the one schmoozing clients at expensive steakhouses on Michigan Avenue. I was the guy who made things work. When projects were falling apart and deadlines seemed impossible, they called me. When new hires needed training and guidance, I stepped up. When the company needed someone reliable, I was there. I had a corner office on the 14th floor with a view of Lake Michigan. My salary was decent, around $85,000 a year, and I had built solid relationships with our biggest clients. Companies like Hartwell Industries and Northern Trust relied on my expertise. I wasn't flashy, but I was indispensable, or so I thought. Everything changed on a cold Monday morning, December 2nd, 2024, when they hired Sloan Whitaker. She walked into our offices wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. 29 years old, blonde, with the kind of confidence that comes from never having to prove yourself the hard way. Her resume was decent. 3 years at a mid-sized firm in Nashville, including 2 successful project completions. But what struck me was how quickly she landed a senior consultant position after just 1 interview. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. Malcolm Hawthorne was our executive director, a 52-year-old divorced man who had been running the company for the past decade. He was smart, successful, and usually fair in his dealings with employees. But I noticed something different about him after Sloan arrived. He started staying late more often, taking longer lunch breaks, and seemed unusually interested in mentoring our newest hire. Within her first week, Sloan was assigned to assist on the Hartwell project, one of our most prestigious accounts that I had been managing for 3 years. Fresh perspective, Malcolm explained during our Monday morning meeting. Sometimes new eyes can spot opportunities we've missed. I didn't argue. I believed in teamwork and thought maybe she could contribute something valuable. But as the weeks passed, I watched Sloan struggle with basic concepts that any senior consultant should know. She fumbled client presentations, missed important deadlines, and seemed to spend more time in Malcolm's office than at her own desk. The other team members started coming to me with their concerns. Jennifer from accounting pulled me aside one afternoon in early January. "Noah, what's going on with Sloan? She doesn't seem to know what she's doing, but Malcolm keeps praising her work." I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was just adjusting to our company culture. Maybe she needed more time to find her footing. I even offered to help train her on our project management systems, but she brushed me off with a smile. "Thanks, Noah, but Malcolm is already showing me everything I need to know." The turning point came exactly 8 weeks after Sloan's arrival. It was a Thursday afternoon, January 30th, 2025, and I was reviewing quarterly reports when Malcolm called me into his office. The moment I walked in, I knew something was wrong. He couldn't look me in the eye, and he kept fidgeting with his Mont Blanc pen, a nervous habit I'd noticed over the years. "Noah, I need to talk to you about some changes we're making," he began, his voice unusually formal. "The company is heading in a new direction, and we need fresh leadership to drive our strategic initiatives." I sat there quietly, waiting for him to get to the point. In my 7 years at Peterson and Associates, I'd never received anything less than excellent performance reviews. My clients loved me. My projects were always on time and under budget, and I'd trained half the current staff. "We've decided to promote Sloan to Senior Project Director, effective immediately," Malcolm continued. "She'll be taking over the Hartwell account and several other key clients. As for you—" He paused, and I could see him struggling with the words. "We're going to have to let you go. This is part of our strategic restructuring." The words hit me like a freight train, but I kept my expression neutral. 7 years of loyalty, dedication, and results, gone in a 10-minute conversation. No warning, no performance improvement plan, no chance to defend myself. Just a clean termination with 2 weeks severance pay. "I see," I said calmly. "When is my last day?" "Today, actually. HR will handle the paperwork and escort you out." "I'm sorry, Noah. This wasn't an easy decision." But as I looked at him, I realized it probably was easy for him. Maybe even convenient. I cleaned out my desk while Jennifer from accounting watched with tears in her eyes. Several colleagues stopped by to express their shock and disbelief. Tom Bradley, who'd worked with me on the Northern Trust project, shook his head in disgust. "This is bullshit, Noah. Everyone knows you're the best project manager we have." That evening I sat in my apartment in Lincoln Park, staring out at the city lights and trying to make sense of what had happened. 8 weeks. Sloan had been at the company for 8 weeks, and she was already being promoted to a senior position while I was shown the door. Something didn't add up. The next morning I received a text from my former colleague David Martinez. He'd left Peterson and Associates 6 months earlier for a better opportunity at a competing firm. "Hey man, heard what happened. Want to grab coffee? I might have some information you'd find interesting." We met at a Starbucks on North Clark Street. David looked around nervously before pulling out his phone. "I wasn't sure if I should show you this, but after what they did to you, I think you deserve to know." He slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a screenshot from a colleague's Facebook post from 3 weeks earlier. The image showed a group photo from a Chicago business leaders networking event at the Palmer House Hotel. In the background, clearly visible, were Malcolm and Sloan sitting together at a cocktail table, leaning in close and appearing very comfortable with each other, far more intimate than any professional relationship would warrant. "There's more," David said, swiping to the next screenshot. This one showed expense reports that David had accessed during his final weeks at Peterson. He'd been helping with year-end financial reconciliation. "Look at the dates on these hotel bookings." My blood ran cold as the pieces started falling into place. The late nights, the closed-door meetings, the sudden promotion, it all made sense now. But I needed more evidence before I could act. "David, do you still have contacts in HR at Peterson?" He nodded. "Sarah Mitchell and I keep in touch. She was pissed about your termination. Said it came down from Malcolm directly. No discussion with the HR committee." Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly gathered information. I reached out to former colleagues, carefully reviewed professional networking posts, and cross-referenced publicly available information about industry conferences and events that Malcolm and Sloan claimed to have attended. The evidence was building. Malcolm and Sloan had attended at least 3 industry events together since mid-December, always with coordinated travel arrangements. Each time, their expense reports showed they stayed at the same hotels and attended the same sessions. But more telling was the pattern of joint bookings and shared transportation that Jennifer had uncovered in the accounting records. But the smoking gun came from an unexpected source. Jennifer from accounting reached out to me on a Friday evening. "Noah, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I processed the expense reports. Malcolm approved Sloan's travel to a conference in Milwaukee during her 3rd week, which violates our policy that new senior hires must complete orientation and initial project assignments before business travel. But more importantly, Malcolm attended the same conference, and I noticed their hotel reservations were made as a single booking." I thanked Jennifer and hung up the phone. I now had everything I needed: timeline inconsistencies, policy violations, clear evidence of favoritism, and what appeared to be fraudulent expense reporting. But more importantly, I had evidence of Malcolm abusing his position of power to benefit someone he was personally involved with. I spent the weekend organizing everything into a comprehensive dossier. I'm a project manager by nature, so I approached this like any other critical deliverable. I created a timeline, cross-referenced dates and locations, and compiled all the evidence into a professional presentation that would make any consultant proud. The dossier included expense report irregularities totaling over $4,000, policy violations regarding new hire travel procedures, and clear evidence of favoritism in project assignments. I documented how Sloan had been given high-profile clients despite her limited experience with our specific industry verticals, while experienced team members were passed over for advancement opportunities. But I knew I couldn't just send this to Malcolm or even to Peterson and Associates' internal HR department. Malcolm was the executive director. He essentially controlled the narrative within the company. I needed to go higher up the food chain. Peterson and Associates was owned by Meridian Holdings, a larger investment group based in downtown Chicago that owned several consulting firms across the Midwest. I did my research and found that Meridian had very strict policies about ethical conduct and conflict of interest situations. Their website prominently featured their corporate governance standards and whistleblower protection policies. On Monday morning, I sent the entire dossier directly to Meridian's compliance department, along with a cover letter explaining the situation. I made it clear that I wasn't seeking revenge or trying to cause trouble. I was simply reporting what appeared to be serious violations of corporate policy and fiduciary responsibility. I also sent copies to the Illinois Department of Labor and filed a complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, citing potential discrimination and retaliation. I wanted to make sure there was an official paper trail that couldn't be swept under the rug. Then I waited. I didn't call anyone at Peterson and Associates. I didn't reach out to former colleagues asking for updates. Simply went about my business applying for new positions and networking within the Chicago consulting community. The first sign that my actions had consequences came 4 days later. David called me, barely able to contain his excitement. "Noah, you need to hear this. Sarah from HR just texted me. There are investigators from Meridian Holdings in the building. They've been there since 8 a.m., and they've been interviewing everyone. Apparently, the investigation was thorough and methodical. Meridian took these kinds of allegations seriously. They had to, given their fiduciary responsibilities to their investors and clients. Over the course of a week, they interviewed the entire staff, reviewed financial records, and examined all travel and expense documentation going back 6 months. The results spoke for themselves. Sloan's expense reports contained numerous irregularities and policy violations. Malcolm had approved expenses and travel arrangements that violated company guidelines and created obvious conflicts of interest. More damaging was the discovery that 2 major clients, including Hartwell Industries, had specifically requested to work with me on their upcoming projects, requests that Malcolm had apparently ignored while assigning the accounts to Sloan. By the following Friday, the hammer fell. Jennifer texted me with updates throughout the day. Sloan was called into a meeting at 9 a.m. and hasn't been seen since. Security is cleaning out her office. 2 hours later, Malcolm just left the building with a box of his personal items. Word is he's been terminated effective immediately. The irony wasn't lost on me. While I'd been escorted out with no warning and minimal severance, both Malcolm and Sloan were facing the consequences of their own actions. The difference was that I'd been terminated for no legitimate reason, while they were dealing with the results of documented policy violations and ethical breaches. But the story didn't end there. The following week, I received a call from Richard Hartwell himself, the CEO of Hartwell Industries, and Peterson and Associates' largest client. "Noah, I heard about what happened at Peterson. I also heard about some irregularities in how our account was being managed. I want you to know that we specifically requested you for our Q2 expansion project, but we were told you were no longer available." That conversation led to others. It turned out that several clients had similar stories. They'd been working with me for years, trusted my expertise, and were disappointed to learn I was no longer with the firm. More importantly, they were concerned about the quality of service they'd been receiving since my departure. Northern Trust's procurement director was particularly blunt. "Noah, Sloan Whitaker couldn't answer basic questions about our account structure. We've been considering taking our business elsewhere, but if you're available as an independent consultant or with another firm, we'd love to continue working with you. This gave me an idea. Instead of just looking for another job, maybe it was time to explore other opportunities. I'd always been good at managing client relationships and delivering results. Maybe it was time to bet on myself. 3 weeks after Malcolm and Sloan's departure from Peterson and Associates, I received a call that would change everything. James Morrison, the managing partner at Crawford Strategic Group, one of Peterson's biggest competitors here in Chicago, wanted to meet for lunch. We met at the Capitol Grill on North Rush Street in early March 2025. James was direct and to the point. "Noah, I've been watching your career for a while. Several of our mutual clients have mentioned your work, and frankly, we've been looking for someone with your experience in client relationships to lead our new expansion team." The offer was substantial, $150,000 annually, a significant increase from what I'd been making at Peterson, plus performance bonuses, full benefits, and the opportunity to build and lead my own team. But the best part was the client list they wanted me to manage. "We've already had preliminary discussions with Hartwell Industries and Northern Trust," James explained. "Both companies expressed interest in moving their accounts to Crawford if you were part of our team. They trust you, Noah. That kind of client loyalty is exactly what we value." I accepted the offer that afternoon. Within 6 weeks, I was settling into a corner office on the 22nd floor of the Willis Tower, with a much better view of Lake Michigan than I'd ever had before. The transition took time, but was ultimately successful. By late April 2025, Hartwell Industries officially moved their account to Crawford, bringing nearly $1.8 million in annual billings with them. Northern Trust followed in May, along with 2 smaller clients who'd specifically requested to continue working with me. In my first full quarter at Crawford, I brought in over $2.5 million in new business. Meanwhile, Peterson and Associates was struggling. Without Malcolm's leadership and with several major clients departing, they were forced to lay off nearly 25% of their staff by June 2025. The Meridian Holdings investigation had concluded with significant fines and mandatory compliance training for all remaining employees. The company's reputation in the Chicago consulting market was severely damaged. I learned through the grapevine that Sloan had left Chicago entirely by April. Her LinkedIn profile showed she'd moved back to Nashville and taken a junior associate position at a small firm, essentially starting over. Malcolm's situation was worse. Word was that he was facing potential legal action from Meridian for misuse of company funds and breach of fiduciary duty. But here's the thing that made this whole experience so satisfying. I never had to do anything vengeful or unprofessional. I simply documented the truth and reported it through proper channels. Malcolm and Sloan destroyed themselves through their own unethical behavior. I just made sure the right people knew what was happening. By July 2025, I was promoted to Senior Managing Director. My team had grown to 8 consultants, and we were handling some of the most prestigious accounts in the city. I was making more money than I'd ever imagined, working with clients who respected my expertise, and leading a team of talented professionals who actually wanted to learn and grow. The final piece of satisfaction came just 2 weeks ago, when I received a LinkedIn message from Jennifer, my former colleague from Peterson & Associates. She'd been laid off during their downsizing and was looking for new opportunities. I was happy to bring her onto my team at Crawford, with a 30% salary increase and much better growth prospects. During our first coffee meeting as colleagues again, she shared some interesting news. You know, Noah, after everything that happened, people at Peterson started calling what you did the Candler method. Quiet, professional, and absolutely devastating. Malcolm and Sloan thought they could play games with people's careers, but you showed them that actions have consequences. I never set out to destroy anyone or get revenge in the traditional sense. I simply refused to accept an injustice and took appropriate action through proper channels. The fact that Malcolm and Sloan faced consequences for their behavior wasn't revenge. It was accountability. Sometimes the best response to betrayal isn't anger or retaliation. It's professionalism, patience, and letting people face the natural consequences of their choices. Malcolm thought he could abuse his position of power to benefit someone he was personally involved with. Sloan thought she could advance her career through shortcuts instead of merit. They were both wrong. Today, I'm more successful than I've ever been, working with clients who value integrity and competence over office politics. My team respects me because I earned that respect through consistency and fairness. And every morning when I look out at Lake Michigan from my office in the Willis Tower, I'm reminded that sometimes the best revenge is simply being better than the people who tried to tear you down. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.